Slasher's Keep is a roguelike game with first-person combat as its main draw, and it's the first commercial effort by solo indie developer Damien Schloeder. You'll loot and plunder your way from floor to floor in pursuit of the one seemingly insurmountable goal, escaping the keep. It reminds me a great deal of Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, with a bit of old-school dungeon crawling for good measure, but while Dark Messiah was criticized for its single-player experience, the roguelike elements of Slasher's Keep make it stimulating enough to keep you flying solo for hours. Firstly, most of the action you'll be experiencing in Slasher's Keep will be melee combat. It plays exactly how you'd expect. Press the left mouse button to swing and hold it down to charge a more powerful attack. But to succeed, your strategy has to consist in more than simply always being on the offensive. There is a parry system in place whereby you must not only hold down the right mouse button, but also swing it towards the direction of the blow you're about to receive. You'll also receive a red glow on your weapon to let you know you've parried, as well as a small damage buff for your next attack. Parrying is crucial to survival. In addition to melee combat, Slasher's Keep features ranged combat with wands, of which there are two kinds. The first plays much like a first-person shooter, firing projectiles on each click of the left mouse button, just like a lot of the goblin enemies you'll be encountering. But the other kind of wand plays a lot like the physics gun from Half-Life 2. You can pick up certain objects and launch them toward enemies like exploding barrels, or push enemies back into hazards or off ledges. It's not quite the same as how it plays in Half-Life 2, but it's good fun to weave the use of the wand in between your melee attacks, and it's also quite effective. Ultimately, the wand combat isn't as compelling as the melee combat. Charging the primary attack by holding down the left mouse button while using a big, powerful mace or sword and unleashing it upon the nearest enemy provides some nice audio-visual feedback. And if you aim it right, you can chop their heads clean off. And then the heads explode, obviously. In truth, these heads only explode because of this skill that I happen to have at the time. You can access your skill book by pressing B by default, and skills can be acquired by completing the quests offered by the talking faces on the walls that you'll run into from time to time. The skill book system definitely could have been explained better. If you don't check the key bindings before you launch the game, you may very well go on a few runs without realizing it's even there, like I did. But they offer some neat modifiers to the Slasher's Keep experience, and so their addition is ultimately welcome. As mentioned, Slasher's Keep is a roguelike game, and as a result, each death sends you back to the prison on the first floor, wiping your inventory and removing most of your levels, stats, and skills. But on each floor above the first, you'll find item chutes, which allow you to send items from your inventory, such as potions, weapons, armor, the usual, back to the first floor cell so you can retrieve them at the start of your next run, which is really helpful. The leveling system is very straightforward. When you level up, you'll see a pretty elaborate animation indicating so and receive some stat points to allocate in the process. You'll sometimes see a magic item require a certain number of strength or intellect before it can be equipped, but I'm really not sure how stats directly affect combat. One of the great things about Slasher's Keep is the inventory sack and exploiting environmental hazards. A quick press of the sack button, F by default, swings out your massive inventory sack towards the enemy, knocking them backwards. I can't think of many games that use the inventory as anything other than a necessity of realism, but Slasher's Keep uses a sack as the primary means of knocking enemies into hazards and pitfalls. This is one of the things that makes Slasher's Keep reminiscent of Dark Messiah, though it isn't capitalized upon to quite the same extent. Now let us consider the game experience itself. Zombies are some of the first enemies you will encounter, and as such, they are not very challenging. Additionally, starting off a run of Slasher's Keep with a lame weapon can make the initial experience frustrating. It would be easy to get the wrong impression based on the first few levels or your first few runs, but the game gets much more compelling once you clear a floor or two, encountering some more challenging enemies and get some loot drops. Not all of the enemies are so weak or so easily dispatched as the zombies. You'll soon be encountering mole rats, blobs, goblins, and skulls, which are much more formidable enemies. Overall, there are 15 enemy types in the game as it stands now in early access, but you'll have to keep playing for a while to see all of them. The real difficult parts of Slasher's Keep are the challenge rooms in which multiple enemies and enemy types are thrown at you and you don't have the luxury of escaping. Of course, the art style is the most immediately striking thing about this game. It features sprite-based models in a 3D environment. Coupled with the first-person perspective, it's reminiscent of the original Doom. But unlike Doom, Slasher's Keep is rife with bright and colorful graphics, making it accessible to a much wider audience. The rest of the presentation elements are pretty great and are just as stylized as the graphics. There's also some very high quality music in Slasher's Keep, especially at the main menu. Take a listen. Keep in mind that Slasher's Keep is in Steam Early Access at the time of this review, so you ought to consider whether or not you want to support the ongoing development of what might be a buggy or incomplete game. But in the particular case of Slasher's Keep, I can confidently say there is sufficient content and playability to justify paying the cost of entry. All things considered, Slasher's Keep is a surprisingly robust indie game that pretty successfully emulates the combat of Dark Messiah, infused with roguelike dungeon crawling. It has an instantly recognizable art style, as well as exceptional presentation and music. The fact that it was made by one person makes an already impressive package even more remarkable. Slasher's Keep is highly recommended. You can pick up Slasher's Keep in early access on Steam for $15.49 Canadian or your regional equivalent. Don't forget to head over to thattechshop.com and use code LOSEREVIEWS20 for 20% off reasonably priced gaming equipment and more. Until next time, thanks for watching Lose Reviews.